Could they imagine a tomorrow like that? And yet that's exactly what happened. So I stood there. On the opposite side of the Colosseum, there's another cross. The same Pope put a cross, we'll show you this picture, at the Gladiator Gate. And today, as a reminder of what God can do, as a reminder of how big we can dream, as a reminder of what is possible tomorrow, there hangs a cross over the emperor's entrance to the Roman Colosseum. You know why this is important to you and it's important to me? Because the realities of today crush our dreams for tomorrow. And the realities of today have a tendency to dwarf the vision God gave us when we were first called to ministry. And we look around our culture, and we look around our student ministry, we look around our churches, and we wonder, will the church always be marginalized? Will the church always just seem to have no place in culture? Will the church ever again find leverage in such a way that it can make a difference, not only in the lives of individuals, but in a culture in general? Well, is it possible that God could do something that great? And yes, it's possible. And do you know how you can always know it's possible? Not because of what you see in your church, and not because of what you see in your city, and not because of what you see in your community, but because today as we gather, there is a cross hanging over the emperor's entrance in the Roman Colosseum. A daily reminder to you and to me that all things are possible, and we need not allow the realities of today to overshadow our dreams and God's call on our life into tomorrow. Now, interesting thing, when you were in school, when you were in college specifically, all of us at some level took an ancient history course. And in this ancient history course, somebody came along and tried to explain to you, and they did it in the course of a half of a lecture or maybe an entire lecture, but somewhere in school, you don't remember, I remember, but I'll tell you why in a minute. You don't remember, but somewhere along the way in an ancient history course, a secular professor probably tried to explain to you in the course of a single lecture how it is that Christianity even survived the first century. Now, the reason I remember is because I was at Georgia State University. We're in an ancient history course, one of those freshman classes everybody had to take. And my professor actually said this. He said, class, tomorrow, we are going to study the rise and spread of Christianity in the ancient world. Tomorrow, this is a lecture hall of about 250 or 300 people. Tomorrow, class, he actually said, there will be no questions and there will be no discussion. To which I immediately thought, I think I'll come to class tomorrow. Why no questions? Why no discussion? And so the following day, I sat down, and I had never talked about or never been taught anything about Christianity in an academic environment at all. I always grew up going to church, knew the Bible, knew the stories. But I had never even thought about how ridiculous it is that we even know the name of Jesus. How outrageous it is that Christianity even survived the Roman Empire or the first century. And so my teacher, the next day, we all were there in class, and I had several Christian friends with me, and we listened to, for the first time in my life, someone try to explain, and I'm not exaggerating this story, someone tried to explain how a handful of people who lived in a dusty, undesirable part of the world known as Palestine, whose leader had been crucified by Rome, who were outcast by their society, by the Jewish culture, and by all religious culture, who had no leverage, no money, no momentum, no nothing. I heard him explain how it was that this little band of people whose leader had been crucified eventually got their message outside of Palestine, and it spread all over the world, and his story did not hold water. It was absolutely preposterous. You see, one of the great mysteries in history is, why did Christianity survive the first century? Why is there a cross hanging in the emperor's entrance to the Roman Colosseum? How did it happen? And you can find books on this. It's absolutely incredible. I read a book recently that was trying to estimate how many Christians there were in the world during the time following Jesus. Not a Christian book, but the author was grappling with the fact, how did so many Christians end up in Rome? So many Christians in Rome in such a short period of time that Nero was actually able to blame the burning of Rome on the Christians, persecuted the Christians, and instead of putting out that flame, spread them all over the world. How did that happen? It's one of the great mysteries of history, but it's only a mystery if you don't understand the book of Acts. The spread of Christianity, which you are a part of, the spread of Christianity is undeniable and it is unexplainable. If you remove the supernatural, it is absolutely unexplainable. There is no reason why Christianity should have survived the first century. There's another little-known fact that compounds the question as well. There's a chunk of history that probably none of us studied in school unless you majored in history. It's called the Jewish Wars. The Jewish War started about 64 to 65 AD when the Jewish people around the city of Jerusalem in Palestine decided to rebel against the Roman Empire, which was an absolutely foolish thing to do. And during this 4 to 5 to 6 year war that ultimately culminated in the Romans completely surrounding Jerusalem in 70 AD, which you're probably familiar with, in the course of that, Jewish people were slaughtered by the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. And finally, Titus got so fed up of waiting outside the city of Jerusalem trying to get the insurrectionists to surrender, he began crucifying every Jew he could find. You can read this in